Hey, hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Cut the Shit, Cue the Genius, where all our audience members are our geniuses. Not Adam Parry, not Michelle Bruno, or not Delia Algazar. And we have Shapiro and Jordan. Oh my God, early birds. Probably Michael has espresso in hand, which is always the case. And we have an awesome discussion to be had today. Welcome, Adam, once again on Cut the Shit Show. It's like a cadence, right? Like it's almost like 2 weeks prior to Event Tech Live Vegas. We got to get you, mate, on on the show. So Bruno and I are super excited to debunk some of the bullshit that we've been hearing about in the tech landscape. And you just launched a really awesome report with Bizzabo. I was just in the corner of like the chat room when you had your webinar. I think it was last week.
Yeah.
So now we have you all to ourselves because that's the way we roll. And I want everybody, hey, Paul, I want everybody to ask Adam all the hard questions and ask Bruno and myself all the easy ones. So that is the cadence of this session.
I'm sweating already.
You should be. We're going to share the URL to the report. If you haven't had a chance to download it and dissect it, you got to. And this conversation, we're going to keep it rolling on LinkedIn as well. So, and at Event Tech Live Vegas. So if you did not book your ticket, you have to book your ticket to Vegas. So that's the rule, or else just jump off the call. I mean, like that's it. All right, Adam, I don't know if we need to make an introduction, like who you are, but like if you just 2 seconds, because if anybody doesn't know you, I don't know what's in the world.
Editor of Event Industry News, global publication for the events industry, and organizer of events for event profs and refocus on technology and sustainability. I'm kind of having to evolve this now. Right now,
yes, you do. Like I was like, you better record that. That was really good for a hot minute. So talk about the report, the audience of the report, because what I saw was it was primarily UK and EMEA based. So what's the methodology and how did it come about?
Yeah, sure. So the report actually was originally launched in 2021, and we took a break from it because, to be fair, the report was just so skewed towards virtual and everything that was happening at the back end of the pandemic and things like that it was interesting, but it didn't really tell us anything we didn't already know. So we took a break from it because we didn't want to just produce something that was kind of like not really showing any kind of change or interest and that kind of stuff. And actually, from the back end of, from Vegas last year for the first time, going into London last year, we started to see some changes in behaviour when people were registering for Event Tech Live, and what they were telling us they were currently using, the areas of interest that they were looking to learn about or invest in, and also a change in budgets as well. So how much of that budget was going to be spent. And the methodology of how we produce this report is quite heavily weighted to the insight that we gained through the questions and the way that we structure the questions when people are registering for the show. Mm-hmm. Lots of people think they're all about what's going to tell all the exhibitors this. Naturally not, it's selfish. We just want it for the report kind of thing. So we had 1,690 respondents that we accounted for that we qualified for the report. And obviously with Vegas being a smaller and brand new show, the number of respondents there was smaller than what we've got that we could quantify and qualify was smaller than what we've got for London. London's a more established show, 2,500 attendees coming to that show. So that's why it's weighted more towards that. And I will also say there's probably a bit more investment happening in Europe and EMEA.
And we're going to talk about that because there's huge lessons to be learned from across the pond to North America. And that's the beauty of our industry as well. So one thing that I noticed, and Viv, if you can help us by pulling up the first slide. Okay, so we're talking about like event tech applications in the top 5 areas, and yet again, 42% mobile apps is like the number one. Are we freaking kidding right now? Like how many every from our audience, how many times have you been to events and the mobile apps are not cutting it? I mean, we are not getting it right. So like even though it is the number one priority, what the hell? Adam, fix it.
Well, I think actually what the report is indicating as a whole, and if you look at the number of respondents on the lower end of investment and the lower end of number of events and things like that, it's actually quite weighted towards people, if you look at it carefully, that are actually getting started with event technology. So it's only based on opinion. I've not done any further research on this and interviewed individuals on this, but my opinion is that there's a lot of companies that have come out of the pandemic realize that they need to learn more about their audience to be a stronger product, to kind of grow, and are looking to get into event technology. And event apps are actually a really easy way, low hanging fruit to get started, to repurpose the content that they've already got on websites and put it into the hands of the attendee. And I would like to think, even since the days of Double Dutch and things like that, event apps have got a lot better in their functionality and their use and stuff like that.
Say that with a straight face, because we
I've
got a
just
lot of people in the chat. They're like, "Wait, what? No."
they have
Like,
got a lot.
MK was just at an event and they didn't even have one. So,
I'm not saying you need one. I'm not
no,
saying
you
you
do
need.
need one.
I'm not saying you need one, but I think it's an easy entry level point for people to get in. Abigail Cannons at Grip was just telling me about a really great success story they've had with a first time event that's in the sports and fitness. And actually, but there was still a lot of learnings from them because they were just getting started on it and they had really good adoption. I think when it comes to event apps, that's the thing that the industry is still lacking. We're thinking about it very, very basic in the way that we promote event apps, which is generally just an email saying, hey, the event app's here. I'm like, okay, so but why? Like there are probably 15 different personas in the reasons that people are coming to an event. Mm-hmm. Some are looking for exhibitors, some are looking to meet new people, some are looking for job opportunities, some are looking just for the education and stuff like that. But it's the messaging on the whole is very generic still on here is the event app.
I mean, Leanne hit a point where it's like the app is really for personalized agenda. I mean, I would love it that the app is a personal assistant for me. So like if we're looking at, AI, which I know we're going to be talking about, we have to come to a point where like the event app is not necessarily only for the event. It is your personal assistant throughout that event journey, pre and post. I don't know how many times, and I just was at Showcase yesterday, where for the love of God, you tell me to connect with someone and to send messages to people within an app, and then all of a sudden, I'd have no access to it. You tell me to, I can't even connect my LinkedIn, that it's automatically like sending people to somewhere where I know I'm going to reach them. So I'm not kidding when I say we don't say the P word and don't say the C word, because that whole Corona coaster thing should have just catapulted us to like not even think twice about that hub of information that becomes your assistant. But anyway, my rant is over.
There is. I will say there's a company in stealth at the moment that's using AI, and I can't say who they are and what they're called.
Why?
Because they don't want anybody to know yet. And for the first time, what they showed me, for a long time, what they showed me gave me goosebumps. So I think
that gives goosebumps.
Yeah. For the first time, something that I could see being used from every stakeholder in the event business, from operations, marketing, event director, attendees. It's really, 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 really slick.
That's really what we need. Bruno, you have any hard questions for Adam?
Well, I want to kind of probe the whole apps thing a little bit. I mean, could some of the low lift for the people that are using mobile apps be because a lot of the mobile apps, the standalone companies, were purchased and subsumed by the bigger event management platforms? So it's like someone's going to produce an event, they use an event management platform, boom, your app's already there. So could that account for some of the higher adoption and interest in apps? Or are you thinking that that number is just people that are all of a sudden like, I am interested in a standalone app and I'm going to find out everything I can about it?
I would honestly probably say more the latter, because otherwise the term all-in-one event platform would probably be a feature on that list there. If event app was coming as part of a bundled service, I don't think it would be the top thing people would respond to in terms of what they are already using. Because I wouldn't think of it like that. I wouldn't think I'm using an event app and the event management platform comes with that. I would be thinking about it the other way around. I think the other thing as well is the landscape's changed a lot. We now have, we still have sole event app players, but the budgetary entry level is way, 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 way lower. I think there's even one out there that's 30 quid a month or something like that to get started. So I think again, it's that decision making process, isn't it? Of like a company wanting to get into event tech and want to start using something. Do they commit themselves to an $8,000 to $10,000 a year commitment for multi years, not knowing how it's going to go, or do they throw a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000 at an event and see what sticks? So I think it's probably more towards the latter, to be honest with you.
So another question I have, in the report, you had like the what's in, what's out, the what's hot, what's not section. What's not is the metaverse and to a certain extent virtual events.
Yeah.
But the what's hot was AI. So if
no surprises.
Right. So if I think to a lot of huge extent, virtual and the metaverse were sort of victims of either economics or the pandemic or, just other factors. Facebook was in metaverse and then they pulled out, and we are not an industry that develops unique things. We follow the major trends of the overall technology landscape. So my question is, what makes you think AI is not also one of those things, at least in our vertical, that, yeah, it's cool, it's all the rage right now, but give it a year or two, especially since AI in some respects is the antithesis of what we want to be as an industry, this sort of face-to-face human interaction. So it's a big philosophical question, but I'm sure you're grappling with it.
I think it really depends on how you frame artificial intelligence and where the use cases are. I think, one of the reason I don't think artificial intelligence might be affected like virtual and hybrid. Let's look at virtual and hybrid first. We as an industry, we overdosed on it, right? And it was, medicine that was given to us at a time that we didn't feel ill. So, it wasn't a really nice scenario for the professional events industry. Everybody wanted to get back to the thing that they loved and got into the industry for, which was physical events. So I'm not surprised that that's gone away, but the report shows that actually there's still a lot of, I think we need to reframe virtual, to be honest with you, into digital content, online content, because, that's not going away. And there are some companies out there doing a huge amount of it. Box.com, Atlasan, others, corporates especially, are doing a huge amount of digital-led content strategy events and things like that. Metaverse, I feel like that's one of those where it is actually quite alien to the events industry. And the reason it's not going to take off at the moment is because on the whole, the technology is still really expensive. Dahlia, I saw you post your video the other day of using
Apple Vision Pro.
Apple Vision Pro, and I'm an Apple fanboy, but I ain't going and spending that amount of money.
Well, honestly, I didn't spend it either. Like, I was a glass hole for the longest time and got the HoloLens and all of the other virtual sets. I agree with you though. Like, the expense will hurt the adoption.
Yes. Yeah.
But but the ideas and the creativity that comes from the metaverse concepts and the experiences with mixed reality and what Apple Vision Pro is pushing within other sectors like healthcare and real estate and productivity should be pushing us harder to be more creative.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the metaverse events and their use case will grow, but it will be a slow curve rather than a high pickup on adoption, a bell curve and things like that. But the technology needs to become more accessible. The production needs to be lower in terms of budget. You know, some creativity, like you said earlier, needs to come in there of how people are using it and using it for their friends and their family and things like that. And then when that technology becomes more ubiquitous, it will make more sense as an industry to start rolling out those experiences for people, because we know the adoption rate is that the barrier to entry is a lot lower in terms of trying to get adoption. Back to artificial intelligence, I think there's so many points of intersection within our own personal lives already and within professional businesses. And then, you know, the technology companies themselves are already starting quite on a large place to harness the technology themselves to do things on their platform. So some of it won't even be necessarily very apparent that the experience we're getting through a piece of technology is delivered in part through AI. You know, I'm using probably 4 or 5 different pieces of AI technology just on a weekly basis to run the business from an event management perspective, to streamline the process, to automate things, to make me more efficient and stuff. And then when it comes to the actual technology used at events, you know, back to this who shall not be named company that's producing this. No, I
want goosebumps too.
I'm not. I'll introduce him to you, Dahlia. They'll probably talk to you. But
then I'll take him out of stealth mode because that's how it should be, and then I will share with all the other geniuses.
Yeah. And it's just those, you know, AI will also become, AI won't be affected, I don't think, in the same way as some of these other technologies, because it's creeping into our lives on a daily basis, whether we like it or not. You know, it will become one of those things that, again, we will use things at home or in our personal lives or in our business lives. And we're not thinking, oh, we're using AI at this time. We're just going, oh, this does this for me. And it does it in a really seamless way, but it's all AI powered.
So are you comfortable sharing what tools you use on a daily basis?
Yeah. I'm going to give a shout out again to Abby, because she's just given me one actually that I've been using. I've used like 10 times since she told me about it yesterday. A system called Fathom. Yes. Fathom is probably one of the best tools for taking notes and recording calls and things like that I've come across, and I've tried a few of them. Recall's another one. Recall's quite good, and I'm gonna also give a shout out to. Can I give a shout out to one of their event technologies?
Of course.
So I think one of the areas that will change on this report for next year and the year after is, again, it's back to AI, but it's AI technologies that are helping with accessibility, translation, people being able to interact with the event in the most comfortable way to them. And again, I'm not saying this for sure, but I do feel like maybe the industry in the UK and Europe is maybe slightly ahead of the curve on that than maybe the North America market. But, you know, we have been translating all of our content live through AI for 2 years now into German, Spanish, and French. That's predominantly because that's the European audience that comes to the show, but we can do a bunch of languages. And there are others, like this is by Interprify. There are other great companies out there like Wordly and others. And I think that's really important if we want to start not only making our events more accessible, but also starting to attract those audiences from those countries that want to participate in our events. We can't geo-clone our event into every different country just to grow it. And that technology is going one step further now, and it will start to play a role in people actually having conversations with each other where English or Spanish isn't their first language and they can converse. And that goes one step further as well. I'm starting to see a number of technologies kind of come out around sign language and things like that. So again, this is not necessarily on the stage. This is people actually having conversations with each other on the show floor.
Where I think accessibility is going to be empowered with AI.
Yeah.
And actually, to be honest, with devices like the Apple Vision Pro. So I want to step back because there's a lot of the chatter is still about the virtual and calling it the digital experiences and so forth. And we need to debunk this, that the virtual events are coming back probably for certain sectors and for certain reasons, because some of the physical conferences are just not the best experiences for everybody. Right. And sorry.
Dahlia's got the entire school at home.
Welcome. Yeah. So the whole idea of digital experiences, you know, what we're seeing also from our side, from our agency side, is when it comes to certifications, when it comes to extending content, you know, from whether it was face-to-face or it's a different revenue stream whatsoever. So I want to debunk with you that virtual is not dead. We can call it digital if you want. Party at Dahlia's. Lori, you're so welcome to take care of these people. But what I also want to get, because in your report, you talk about like the streaming and you talk about the content. And so what needs to shift in event professionals' minds when it comes to content as a revenue stream, as an extension, and as a value add, and to multiple stakeholders, not only to the attendees?
Well, there's the 80% that we don't reach with a physical event, right? You know, I think even, let's take IMEX as an example. You know, I think they roughly work on a 60% conversion rate of attendees, right? So, and they do really well. That's a really good industry average. It's above average, their conversion rate, IMEX. We run about 55% or something like that on Event Tech Live. And what did IMEX get in Vegas? 13,000 attendees. So that's 6,000 or so that aren't coming to the show. But I think we have to think of them as different experiences if you're going to run them concurrently.
Right.
Or you have to think about them running separately for another reason. You know, there's so many people, I can't get to every single industry show. I can't get to every event that I want to go to. And I guess just to give an example, like the way that Atlazan are doing it from their point, they're calling them for their audience content drops. So they're using a digital pinpoint. So they're using a live stream, a conversation like this that is the pinnacle point, the focus for an hour. But what they've done is they've already got a bank of content pre-recorded. Some of that in a studio, some of that from previous events or more recent events that they've done, and they've re-edited that content, articles, reports, other things. And then once that first bit of live stream content is done, everything becomes on demand and accessible at that point, which then they can kind of dip into what they want, whether they want to go to the report, whether they want to watch a 15-minute segment with another speaker, whether they want to have a chat about something. And I think that's a really interesting and different strategy. And I think back to your point of like, it's coming back for certain verticals. I think it's coming back a lot for media and corporate and those organizations that really want to have multiple touch points with their customers and their prospects to really feed their business and keep them engaged and stuff, because the competition out there is rife.
It is.
So, you know, again, Box.com, they've been doing it for decades, this strategy before the pandemic. They had to change the way that they were delivering them through the pandemic, and they've had to change the way that they are delivering them again after the pandemic, because they found that things have shifted in terms of people's preferences and their expectations and things like that. But we can take learnings from that, because like we all used to go to the video store to pick a video up, and now we watch Netflix. And if an entire series is not available to us online immediately, but that doesn't stop us going to the cinema, does it?
Yeah,
because it's a different experience.
Absolutely, it is a different experience, and it's for different reasons or purposes as well. So
I'm still a believer that there will probably be more physical events born out of people that launch with a digital first strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Because going physical first is extremely risky.
Yeah, I totally agree. Bruno, any questions for Adam? Or like the audience?
What does your sweatshirt say?
It says, I cause safety briefings.
Oh. I thought that was like a real thing. Is that a sustainability message, or what's going on there?
It's coming up to the event.
Mm-hmm.
I literally am in the risk assessment.
No, I mean, do you think there's more interest in event technology overall? Because it seems like it's just one of those things that is like learning math, for a lot of people. It just seems to be too icky or too complex, or they're just not interested. It's not, unless we have something like AI, and then everyone flocks to AI or metaverse or whatever. It needs like this magnet or this huge disruption for people to really realize, like, it is kind of one of those things we have to incorporate in events if we want to progress this industry.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
it just does seem like a hard sell sometimes.
Everybody's a bit of a magpie, right? At times, like everybody likes to think they're on the leading edge of something, and there's something new and sexy to talk about, right. And that's cool, and we can talk about that and stuff like that. When it comes to event tech, I like the really kind of, I would say, mundane and not sexy stuff, like the operational technologies, the things that actually help people on a day-to-day basis. Why are people still managing speakers and sessions and content on spreadsheets? That's just bonkers to me. Like there are some fantastic companies out there that have been doing that for a long time, and some new companies that are doing it in a different way. It just doesn't make sense to me that people will be stubborn enough not to change the way they work for a short amount of pain for a long-term gain in their kind of like day-to-day job and their work and stuff like that. I think it's very easy to get caught up. I think, there was somebody that came to the show in London and they were like, where's the innovation? And I'm like, well, we don't need to like have these rocket ships of technology powering the events industry, because where's it going to go? We like how the events are produced. The technology that's innovative to me is the stuff that's making Janet work 2 hours less a day in the lead up to the event, managing stuff and repopulating 15 different sheets to make sure everybody's got on the same page with content and stuff like that. So, we're in you said it earlier, Michelle, we are an industry that adopts technology, right? We take input from the outside world. I don't think there is anything that we've created as an event industry as a piece of technology. But I also think it depends on who you ask and what generation they're at as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, Jordan says, go ahead. Go, Bruno.
Which way is it going? The younger generation's getting more excited, or they're more jaded?
More, I wouldn't say either of those. The willingness to adopt and use technology from the get-go
is more prevalent in the younger group coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thought though is, I've always said, you won't see a lot of innovative technology in our space when you look at event tech only. And you and I have and Bruno have always discussed that we need to elevate the conversation, and that event tech is primarily more of, the landscape of MarTech.
Yes.
And there's going to come a time, and it's slowly getting there, where MarTech is going to be what we need to look at and strategize for. As well as, I don't know if business tech is a landscape or a tech or a category or whatever, but that's where we need to be. That's where all our event profs should be talking towards, if you will. So when it comes to MarTech in our space, like, for example, I'm going to start off with two questions real quick because we're running out of time. What are your thoughts on Google buying HubSpot, and what will that do to impact our industry?
My first thought is I don't know whether it'll happen.
Okay.
Those things are fought out in courts and politics, aren't they?
All right, pretend there's no politics. Pretend there's no monopoly. Pretend there's no all these legal shit that we have to deal with.
If I was Salesforce, I'd be worried.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Or Adobe.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, imagine if that happens. And, and it's the same with Bending Spoons went and bought StreamYard. And now they own Meetup and they own Evernote. And there's a content play that can happen there. And we know that you can wrap events around content. But what I'm saying is, we have to get to a point where maybe the innovation is more on a higher level.
I think that's a positive sign, right? At the moment, because of everything that happened through the pandemic with investment and VC money and all this kind of stuff.
P word again. You said the P word.
All right. Well, it's still a period of time that I have to reference. There's the investment into event tech as a category at the moment is dry, right? It's so flat. It's unbelievable. Yeah. But what is a positive note, and it's not always because people are in trouble, there's still mergers and acquisitions happening in the market. And actually that's interesting from bringing event tech more in line with that MarTech stack, because those are the companies that are acquiring those technologies. And I think that, I think Cvent had it on their stand at Adobe Summit. It's like event tech is MarTech. Events are marketing, right? We are a subcategory of MarTech, really. There just needs to be more connection between event tech and that MarTech, and that HubSpot. Well, HubSpot have been potentially bought by Google, but does HubSpot buy other event technologies to make their solution stronger? A lead capture technology would be a perfect example. Maybe a Snowball. Maybe Rachel gets bought. All of these companies could be bought by the larger companies, which then increases adoption. But it also breathes space for new, fresh, and more innovative companies to come in and bolster the gaps and the things that are missing.
It's troublesome to think about mergers and acquisitions and venture capital as the metric for being a healthy industry.
Why
we survived for so long without that sort of influx and influence. And this is for another show, but I think having that always hanging over our heads is a detriment to how we identify, what we think about ourselves, how we innovate. If it's all around who's going to buy us, then people don't take the risks that they used to. People, meaning event technology companies, don't take the risks. And certainly after they are acquired, they stop risk-taking altogether. It's all about the Benjamins. So...
Well, I mean, that's the events industry on a whole, though, isn't it? I mean, if you look at the amount of PE and private money and equity in by events, that's how the industry works. It's what feeds, but it's what gives space for new companies to come in and do things and stuff. So I get your point, Michelle, but I think it's not a metric to measure the industry by. It's just a positive signal that there is interest in it, in terms of those companies don't buy other companies if they don't predict an upside, which means a growth in the adoption of event tech, which probably means a growth in the events industry on a whole. And that's what we're looking at as the metric, is the growth in the industry. I'm just going to
say one thing. Hop in.
What about them, though?
Well, I mean, what made anyone think that the individuals who invested so heavily in Hopin and other companies actually had a crystal ball about how effective that would be in the long term? And it was a short-term play, and that whole thing went to hell in a handbasket, so to speak. And it really wasn't a metric of where an industry is going in the long term. It's just a very short term.
I mean, I think the aside from the example that you're sharing, Bruno, in my opinion, I think there's always going to be room for changing course as well as the innovation in white space. And so, like, you know, even Hopin, the story that they brought in actually brought in acceleration for other tech companies to try to do the same. So it was a catalyst of some kind. And yes, some made it, some didn't. But the essence of what we are trying to create with experiences and events, and even when we say we're looking for innovative technology, we're actually the innovators. Us as designers and content designers are the innovators. It's not the technology. That's the enabler.
And I would also say, ultimately, Titanic sank, and everybody remembers that story. But we still get on ships and sail.
But then you learn from those type of stories.
But everybody wanted to jump on board for that maiden cruise. How did that work?
Yeah, and that's where, you know, those individuals, that VC money, they're gambling. Ultimately, that's what it is. You know, somebody's given them a story that there's this massive upside, and I don't know, maybe the story is how eloquent and, you know, convincing Johnny was at the time. You know, maybe that's the story. Maybe it was a
gave lessons in sales and like VC conversations to others. So, but I mean, I know that we're running out of time, but another myth I would like to debunk with you, Mr. Parry, is the all-in-one category. Can we call bullshit on that? Like once and for all, the holy grail.
There is no all-in-one as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Lord.
If there what I think, you know, I understand why companies are using the term.
Just giving you a promotion, Adam.
I understand why they're using the term, but I mean, all in one for who? For a start, you know, is it all in one for a meeting organizer, a trade show organizer, you know, that kind of stuff? And I, you know, spoke to somebody in Forma recently, and they were like, we will never use one platform for all of our events because all of our events need different things, and the technology providers fit the things that they need. So therefore, if there was such a thing as all-in-one, they would have found the all-in-one, and it would do everything that they needed for all of their events. Right. So I think, you know, there are some companies that are out there and they're very, very straight and tactical and focused on who they know they can serve best, and that's a good thing. I think it's a confusing term for buyers, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Do you have a better term?
I don't think. I just think it shouldn't be used. I think it should be, you know, Event Mobi, we do conferences better than everybody else, and tailor the technology to that market and stuff like that, or come out with a sub product, which is Event Mobi. I'm not using Rob's business here as a beacon of this, so apologies, Rob.
His ears just popped up like, oh my god, I'm getting marketing strategy for free right now.
I think that was earned media.
It's just, you know, like, you know, there are companies that do things for trade shows better. There are companies that do things for corporate large events better. And I actually think if you look at some of the more leading companies, they don't use that terminology in their marketing.
Absolutely. All right, tell us about events.
Functional tech stuff.
Mostly functional tech stuff. So Shapiro must be on espresso number 4.
Cover the wordsmith, I'll tell you.
Core event technology would be better, which means something like registration, website, abstracts. Done.
Yeah. So
core what?
Just core event tech. Okay. Core event tech, which is like, I don't know, I've not thought about this, but it could be like 5 to 6 main things that are system does like registration, event website, event app, that kind of stuff.
Perfect. All right. Before we close, this has been fantastic as always. One other question. What does some people have been asking, what does EWD mean, Adam?
They'll never find out. I'm taking that to the grave.
All right. I am too, actually. So tell us about Event Tech Live Vegas, and what do we expect?
Lots of chocolate fountains, venues, destinations. No, it's just
clad
lots
of feathers.
A lot of crazy people talking about innovation and technology and having arguments like this. No, Event Tech Live, it's a brand new event. We're just getting started with it. It was first year last year, second year this year. We're trying to build what we've built for the UK and European industry ecosystem here, which is a moment in time for people to really come in and really try to understand and learn about technology, to make adoption a bit easier, to make it less risky in terms of investment and stuff. We have Event Tech Live Las Vegas has got 3 stages of content, roundtables, great speakers like yourself, Dahlia, and stuff coming in and imparting that education and knowledge. And I would also say that one of the things that makes us different is we're one of the very few industry events that's free to attend. So if you can afford or convince your boss to send you on a plane and $50 night in the Golden Nugget, then you're probably saving yourselves a couple of $1,000 in fees to learn about stuff.
Well, you're going to be hanging out with the cool kids. So that's one. Shapiro included, and Jordan included, and Leanne included. And Dahlia Plus is having a therapy lounge, and I mean it, where I will just be there to give hugs and kisses and to hear people out. I have brown paper bags if you want to scream. And I have to look at the whole wine thing. If you want to ugly cry with wine, I can figure that out. But it's going to be a Zen spot. So we're going to make that happen. Adam, thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, mate.
Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
This was fantastic. Next week, we are going to continue on this data trend report trail that we're on. So we have Ken Halsinger with Freeman, who's going to be discussing his trend report, which is very, very cool as well, because we just want everybody to be innovative in what they are doing with their events. It's a passion point for all of us. So we are here just to help you cut the shit, cut the hype, do what you need to do, and to stay sane. And we love you. And we're going to see you next week on Thursday. Take care. Ciao.